Okay, good day. Students from KO3 of Scientific Communication class. Today, as we aware that today is the last session for the 10 minutes presentation session. And since we have a pretty packed group of people who are going to present in this session, we like to proceed on time instead of waiting for students arriving in the classroom. So for the first presenter of today's session, I would like to invite Dirli.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to stop my, I'm going to stop my sharing option, and then I'm going to move the screen for Dirli.
Okay.
Okay, whenever you're ready for your talk. Before that, I would like to remind the audience who are not presenting or who already have his or her presentation done in the previous section. Please remember to fill in the assessment sheet. And then after we're done with today's session, you need to submit all of the assessment sheet to the folder given in the EduNext. Or if you have questions for the direction or for the folder of your assessment sheet submission, please don't hesitate to remind me on the Microsoft Teams chat room. Okay, if you have questions regarding the submission folder. And also, if you haven't submit your presentation file, you can upload in PDF or PPT format, depending on your. I'm basically giving you options to give us the some kind of an evidence or some kind of a report that you already done this presentation. So you need to submit the PPT file or the PDF file of your 10 minutes presentation into the given folder in the EduNext. So remember, you need to submit two things. First is the assessment sheet for each presenter, and the other one is the PPT of your own presentation to the given folders. Okay, there are two folders that you need to access in order to submit the assessment sheet and also the presentation file. Okay, and for the presentation file, could be on PDF or in PPT. Okay, without further ado, I would like to give Dirli the time.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good day and hello everyone. My name is Dirli Aprilia, and today I will present an overview of my research related to the identification of subsurface structure using gravity method in the Mojokerto area. Indonesia is a large country full of natural resources and rich for oils and gases. Oil and gas fields can be found spread within the country. One of them is the East Java Basin, located in the Mojokerto area. As reported on the Geological Survey Institute of Indonesia, provided by on the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources website, this basin, especially the one located at the northern part, is one of the main hydrocarbon producers in Indonesia. Given the large amount of energy potential in the East Java Basin, special care must be taken in managing and utilizing it to optimize the use of resources in the East Java Basin, particularly in supporting resource sector activities. Accurate data integrity and information sector monitoring is required. So how do we accrue it? How do we find out what lies beneath the surface of the Mojokerto area, we can identify what's contained in the subsurface to prove whether it is true that there are oil and gas sources in the Mojokerto area by using the gravity method. It is an effective method widely used to analyze the structure of the underground surface, which is presented in the form of gravity anomaly data. So the benefit of this research is to find out the outspread and the depth of basin around the Mojokerto area. The modern gravity measuring device is known as a gravity method. The basic principle of this gravity method is similar to a spring with a constant mass, because the Earth is not a perfect ball and there are other factors that affect the variations in gravity on the Earth's surface. When the gravity method measures gravity at different places, it will produce different readings from one place to another. As you can see, figure 2 represents a simplified illustration of the gravity method principle. When measuring out the gravity of a certain location, a change in the value of gravity will cause change in the mass of the gravity method. This phenomenon will cause the spring with the initial length to be stretched and become longer due to the change in gravity. Hooke's law states, as you can see on equation 1 and equation 2, state that the change in spring length is proportional to the force that causes it, or usually called the spring force, where m is constant mass in gravity method in kilograms and k the elastic spring constant. Next is the regional stratigraphy in East Java Basin. As you can see on figure 3, according to subsurface data from hydrocarbon exploration in this area, the Ngimbang formation is known as the oldest stratigraphic unit above the bedrock. However, this formation is not visible from the surface. Meanwhile, Kujung Formation is the oldest exposed stratigraphic unit, primarily composed of claystone with limestone and sandstone inserts, especially at the bottom. And the youngest stratigraphic unit in the system is Paciran Formation. This formation is composed of massive limestone. From the surface, this formation can be indicated from the deteriorated constituent rocks that turns into chalky limestone. This formation is mostly found in the northern part of East Java Basin. It means Rembang zone and was formed around the Pliocene to the early Pleistocene era. This overall research work can be seen from this flow chart. This research was begun with a literature review so that the author can truly understand the basics of the gravity method and how it is used in geothermal identification. This important information will support the author during this research. However, because there are limitations in taking data directly to the field during the COVID-19 pandemic, this research will be conducted using the existing data. Thereafter, the data is processed to obtain the result, which is interpreted through forward modeling. And this study will also be supported by geological data and other data, if any such log data, seismic data, and etc., so that the subsurface structure can be interpreted properly. In data acquisition using the gravity method, a measurement instrument in the form of a Lacoste and Rombi gravity method is used. Gravity methods measure the value of the gravitational field due to subsurface mass anomalies. Meanwhile, the measuring instrument has high accuracy because the value of a gravity itself has a very small order of variation. Basically, these tools use a zero-length spring, which is connected to a rod and the end where a small mass is present. Research data taken in the field are gravity meters reading, data collection time, coordinates, and height of the measuring station, as well as topography around the measuring station. In data collection, it is necessary to be careful in using the gravimeter so that the gravimeter doesn't experience shocks during measurement or during mobilization, because it will affect the accuracy of the instrument reading. After the data acquisition stage, the next stage is data processing, which is used to make subsurface geological structure modeling. This data processing consists of several stages, including conversion of gravity values into milligal, followed by data reduction, gravity reduction, which consists of drift correction, free air correction, tidal correction, Bouguer correction, latitude correction, and terrain correction. Then the Bouguer anomaly data is filtered to separate regional and residual anomalies by filtering with moving average model, which will then is used to carry out the forward modeling. Then the gravity anomaly data obtained should be classified into regional anomalies and residual anomalies. The residual anomaly pattern is known as an anomaly zone with shallow depth and high possibility of hydrocarbon potential. And the study, qualitative interpretation, was carried out by reading the gravitational anomaly pattern, which was the link to the geological setting and other geological data with gravity forward modeling, GFM. Forward modeling is a form of modeling in which a model that represents subsurface anomalies is solved. This modeling used the concept of trial and error in determining the parameter values to produce a model that fits the field data values. Gravity forward modeling comprises methods for the computation of the gravity field of some mass distribution, very often of the topography, but also from water, ice, and crustal masses. GFM is in the spatial and spectral domain are important for gravity application in physical geodesy, like gravity reduction, interpolation, and prediction, and also or planetary geophysics, like reduction and interpretation of gravity observation. I think that's all from me. For further information about this research, please don't hesitate to contact me via email that I'll already put on this slide. Thank you very much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I hand in back to Mr. Hari.
Okay, thank you, Dirli. You spent 10 minutes for your presentation. I have several notes, especially when you are talking about the interpretation. You sometimes mispronounce the word, but nevertheless, I will discuss about everybody's correction notes that was taken from the performance of the talk. Okay, without further ado, I would like to invite our second presenter. Okay, thank you, Dirli. The second presenter will be Hans. Is Hans in the classroom? Well, I see Hans' names in the participant list. Okay, his mic is on. Okay, whenever you're ready, Hans.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Let me
Good morning.
introduce myself. My name Hans Timothy Christian Manjorang. I am from Institut Teknologi Bandung, Physics of Earth and Complex System Research Division. Today, I want to presentation about Papandayan volcano subsurface structure using magnetotelluric method. Okay, there's preface, background, and the purpose. Background. Indonesia is a country with many series of volcanoes. Papandayan is one of the volcanoes in Indonesia, which is located in Garut. In areas Papandayan, the temperature variation is one of the factors to research the Papandayan subsurface of volcano. The geophysical survey, which is part of Earth Proofing, is aimed at identifying subsurface structure based on parameters using magnetotelluric method to find it. The purpose of this paper is to study and apply the magnetotelluric method to determine the subsurface structure of the area Papandayan volcano. There is the research content that include the magnetotelluric method, Maxwell equation, magnetotelluric acquisition, magnetotelluric data processing. The magnetotelluric method. The MT method is a method of passive electromagnetic measuring electric field that fluctuation and natural magnetic field in the orthogonal direction with the direction of the Earth's surface in order to determine conductivity of the Earth surface from a depth of tens of meters to 1,000 meters. The source of the magnetotelluric waves comes from solar wind and lightning. There is the picture of the source of the MT waves and the direction of the magnetotelluric. Next, the Maxwell equation. According to the Cagney-Red, there are several assumption simplification in deriving the equation that describe the electromagnetic waves propagation used in magnetotelluric method. There is a Faraday's law of induction, the Ampere-Maxwell law, Gauss electric law, and Gauss magnetic law. We can see the Faraday's and Ampere-Gauss electric and Gauss magnetic law with this picture that form integral and differential form. Okay, next is magnetotelluric acquisition. The parameter measured at the time of magnetotelluric acquisition are the electric and magnetic fields of the Earth that vary with respect to time. In electromagnetic waves, electric and magnetic field magnet are always perpendicular to each other and electromagnetic. Waves reach Earth in the form of planar waves. The record of the electromagnetic waves then to sensor are used to the time of acquisition, which result in two types of measurement model. There is transverse magnetic mode and transverse electric mode. Okay. And there is magnetotelluric data processing. There is some Fourier transform, robust processing, and inverse two-dimension. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening my presentation. For further information about the presentation, please contact the email. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hans. You spent only for 5 minutes. So many time that you could use actually for describing more content, but nevertheless, thank you for your efforts. In the next 15 minutes presentation, I hope that you gave more relevant descriptions on the method itself and how it is applied in a certain location in Papandayan area, etc. and so on, so that the time requirement is used properly and without having need to have an extension, etc. and so on. Okay, thank you, Hans. Let us move on to the third presenter. I'm sorry, the pace of today's session is a little bit quicker than the usual because we have 11 presenters for today's session. Let us let us invite Fadila Salsabila as our third presenter for today.
Oke, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Fadila Salsabila with ID number 102181111. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Mahari Mardika for giving me the opportunity to present my paper research, which is titled Determination Earthquake Zone at Padang City based on amplification value analysis and dominant period analysis using microtremor HVSR method. And next, the background is earthquake is a natural hazard that frequently occurs in Indonesia, especially in the recent years. Because in the figure 1, Indonesia is bound the three major plates in the world is this Eurasian plates, Indian, Australian plate, and Pacific plates. As we can see at the figure 1, earthquake distribution in Indonesia, the pattern of the spread of the earthquake is similar to the pattern of the spread of the volcano, which lies at the plate boundary. And next, my research location is Padang City, West Sumatra. West Sumatra located on the coast of Sumatra is adjacent to the subduction zone, which is the confluence of the Indo-Australian and Eurasian tectonic plates, which is West Sumatra is surrounded by active faults, make this area susceptible to seismic hazard that can be damage to infrastructure, buildings, economic losses, and human fatalities. Based on the catalog of Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics Agency, the mainland West Sumatra has experienced significant and destructive earthquakes 6 times. One of the city has prone to disaster of earthquake is Padang City. The purpose of this research is determine the amplification and dominant period value at Padang City area and identify earthquake-prone zones area. And next, what is a microtremor? Microtremor can be defined as a natural harmonic vibration in the surface sediment layer and reflected by the presence of a layer boundary plane with a constant frequency which caused by subsurface microvibration or natural activities. Microtremor observation can be used to determine subsurface characteristics based on dominant frequency parameters and amplification factors. In addition, it can also be used for monitoring volcanic activity, supporting geothermal exploration, microzonation, environmental geophysical research, and geotechnical application. The tools for the recording data, as we can see at figure 5, it is digital laser, GPS antenna, seismic sensor, GPS, solar cell, laptop of acquisition data, and cable. Next, what is HVSR method? Horizontal to vertical spectral ratio, or HVSR method, is introduced by Nakamura. The HVSR method is used to calculate the spectrum ratio of the horizontal component of the microtremor signal to the vertical component. This method produce important parameters, namely dominant frequency values and amplification related to subsurface physical parameters. The result of the SPSR analysis show a spectrum peak at dominant frequency, said Nakamura at 1989. In 2000, Nakamura divides microtemor waves into namely Rayleigh waves and body waves, which is Rayleigh waves are included in surface waves that propagate on the ground surface, and body waves propagate through bedrock, as shown in figure 6. Based on seismic motion at ground level in contact directly with the bedrock is the basin area, the amplification factor in the sediment of layer horizontal, TH, and the vertical movement is denoted by TV. The magnitude of the horizontal amplification TH is obtained by comparing the spectrum of the horizontal motion component at the soil surface HSS with the horizontal motion component spectrum, the base of soil layer HHB. Then the magnitude of the vertical amplification factor or TV is obtained by comparing the spectrum of the vertical motion component at the soil subsurface, HVS, and the vertical motion component spectrum at the base of the soil, HVB. The effect of Rayleigh waves on microtemor recording is equivalent for the vertical or horizontal components over the frequency range 1.2 until 20 Hz. So that the spectrum ratio between horizontal and vertical at base is close to value 1. Then the basic formula for calculating the ratio of the horizontal component to the vertical component microtemor spectrum or HVSR is HVSR equal T side root from north-south component spectrum square plus west-east component frequency spectrum square divide the vertical component frequency spectrum. Next, amplification is a magnification of seismic wave that occurs due to the significant difference between layers. Amplification is related to the impedance contrast ratio of the surface layer with the layer below it, cause the amplification value on area to be different. Impedance contrast is related to the density and speed of the wave in the surface layer with the layer below it. The basic concept of seismic wave amplification by the presence of sediment that is above basement as shown in figure 7. As we can see, the basic concept of amplification can be formulated as the question where is the density 0 and VO is the basement layer and VS is the velocity the sediment layer. In the same rock, the amplification value can be variation according to the degree of deformation and weathering of the rock body. The classification of soil amplification values can be expressed the following table number 1. Okay, next. The dominant period is the time required for the microtemor wave to propagate in the surface sediment layer. The value of dominant period can indicate the characteristic of subsurface layer in a certain area during research based on predetermined classification. The thickness of soft sediment on the surface is directly related to the period value, so the spectrum must be changed in the period domain. The dominant period or T peaking is carried out the peak of SPHR spectrum. The period is the duration of time, one cycle, one repeating event. So the period is the reciprocal of the frequency. The relation between the frequency and the period is given by equation number 3. The value of the dominant period can present the types of soil based on the soil classification table shown in the table 2. This is a soil classification based on dominant period value. Type 1 is period value less than 0.25 is tertiary or old rocks. And the type 2 is with period value between 0.25 until 0.25 is alluvial rock with 5-meter thickness, consists of sandy gravel, sandy hard, clay, and loam. And type 3 is with period value between 0.5 until 0.275 is alluvial rock, almost be same with type 2, only distinguished by the recent bluff formation. And the last is type 4 is more than 0.275 is alluvial rock, which is formed from sedimentation delta, topsoil, mud, and etc. And how to get the data amplification and dominant period. To obtain microtremor data, the first thing to do is determine the location point to be used. Then do measurement at predetermined points. And then the data was collected and processed using HVSR method. The next thing to do is pick the frequency and amplitude GFCS software by displaying the HV signal curve. And after that, getting the peak frequency and amplitude goes to different measurement parameters, namely plot against dominant and period, plot against the amplitude. And the last is the contouring mapping with using ArcGIS. And that's all my presentation. Thank you for attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Adila. Now we are moving on to the fourth presenter. I'm going to ask Muhammad Ridho Nurul Ihsan as our fourth presenter.
Yes, sir.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi.
Good day all. My name is Muhammad Ridho Nurul Ihsan. I am able to present about identification of geothermal potential using long offset sensitivity tomography method in Keflavik, Iceland. Geothermal is one of the most reliable renewable energy resources. Iceland has a huge geothermal potential based on the location of the country on the mid-Atlantic Ocean ridge. The country is mountainous and volcanic with much precipitation, making the hydropower resource abundant. The geothermal resources in Iceland are used to a great extent for both electricity generation and direct use. For the high temperature, which is more than 200 degrees Celsius, fields geothermal steam is used for electricity generation and to an increasing extent also for hot water production. But in the low temperature, which is below 1050 degrees Celsius, fields are used to supply hot water for heating. And the figure one in the right is the installed capacity of the geothermal power plant in the world at 2010. Usually the exploration for geothermal is using the MT method. The MT method is used because it is more accurate and has very deep penetration depth. However, sometimes the MT survey is cost a lot of money to To reduce the cost of the geothermal exploration, the resistivity tomography can be used by extending the offset from the usual geoelectrical survey. The electrical current can reach deeper penetration depth and can map a wider and deeper area. And the purpose of the research is determine the usefulness of long offset resistivity tomography measurement in volcanic environment for geothermal exploration, and second, identification the lithology and mineral composition at the investigated site for validating ERT interpretation by using the sample, which is a board. This is a survey area. The Gravel high temperature geothermal field has about 40 production borehole, several exploration borehole including KH1, KS1, and KH3 have also been drilled. A total of 13 1.2 kilometer long profiles were measured with ERT. All profiles at KS1, which is ISL1 to ISL4 on them parallel with 100 meter spacing in between. 4 profiles at KH1, 3 of them parallel with 100 meter spacing in between, and 1 of them perpendicular to others. An additional long ERT profile, which is in the indicated by long, was measured in the continuation of ISL9 profile on the way to KS1 site. This is a observation in the site, which are 3 boreholes were observed. In the borehole KS1, the temperature below 4 degrees Celsius is observed in the first 300 meters, but reach 300 degrees Celsius at 2,500 meters depth. In KH3, the temperature is about 10 degrees Celsius in the first 2,250 meters, and on the other hand, a strong temperature gradient is observed in KH1, with the temperature reaching 1,075 degrees at 200 meters deep. ERT, or electrical resistivity tomography, consists of injecting direct current or DC along a profile to grounded electrode A or B. The figure is on the next slide, and measuring the resulting voltage in other electrodes. Rho A is apparent resistivity, which is determined by this equation, and K is the geometrical factor. I index AB is the current injected between electrodes A and B. Vm and Vn is the potential measured at the electrodes M and N respectively, and K is the geometrical factor. This is a setup for the measurement. The thermometer RS is the injector for current, and the offset itself is 1.24 kilometers. The data acquisition using 1.24 kilometer long parallel cable with 50 centimeters long steel electrodes ground every 14 meters. We connected to ABEM thermometer LS instrument, one cable for current injection and another for voltage measurement. This is a sample of data processing and inversion for the Figure A is the resistivity at one pseudo depth, and figure B is often the complete pseudo section. I think that's all my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Rido has spent 7 minutes for his presentation. The one particular thing that I noticed from Rido's presentation is that the pace is a little bit slow. So probably next time you could practice so that the pace of your, or the tempo of your presentation or talk a little bit faster, because the current one is a little bit slow in my opinion. Okay, thank you, Rido. Let us move on to the fifth presenter, Arfian.
Yes, sir. My screen appear, sir?
Yes.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, let me start. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
Good day, everyone. My name is Arfian Shandika Pramasta from Physics of Earth and Complex System Research Division, Bachelor of Physics Study Program, Institut Teknologi Bandung. Today, I would like to present you about industrial application of digital rock image technology. So, the outline of this presentation start from background, and then imaging, image analysis, and then method. Okay, for the first section is the background. So the aim of digital rock image technology is thus to derive a digital description of a reservoir rock and then perform numerical simulations of transport process on this obtained digital structure. The purpose of this research is to provide an overview of the current state of digital rock image technology with emphasis on industrial application. Section 2 is about imaging. So, in digital rock physics workflows, imaging of rock samples typically has a twofold purpose. The first one is to obtain sample description, such as grain size distribution, pore size distribution, mineralogy, and etc. And the second one is to obtain 3D structures for computation of effective properties, such as permeability or conductivity. Calculation of effective rock properties from digitized image of the pore structure requires an image resolution that sufficiently resolves all parts of the structure important for the property in question. So we move to 3D imaging. X-ray computed tomography CT, or we known as CT scan, reconstruct a 3D image of a sample from a set of X-ray image of the sample taken at different angles. We can see in picture 1 a micro-CT image of an outcrop Bentheimer sample. The image has a resolution of 6.7 mm, while the sample has a diameter of approximately 5 mm. So the second one is two-dimension imaging, 2D imaging. There are several microscopy methods which produce high-resolution image of rock samples. The most common is backscattered electron, or BSE, image from scanning electron microscopes, or SEM. BSE is routinely applied to acquire image with resolution in the sub-micron scale, and such BSE images are commonly used in rock art precision. We can see in picture 2 BSE image of thin section of Bentheimer sample. The sample is circular with a 1.5-inch diameter. With the right image, we can see containing part of the circular shape to the left is an acquired BSE image of the sample surface. Now we move to the next session is image analysis. So in image analysis, we can analyze the porosity classification. Porosity information is obtained from image by segmentation. When excluding factors, sandstone porosity can be classified into 3 types: intergranular, dissolution, and microporosity. The intergranular porosity is the primary porosity between the grains. The separation between effective and microporosity is thus dependent on the image resolution and image quality. And the second one is grain size and distribution. The grain size distribution is an integral part of the sedimentological description of reservoir rocks. Grain size can be extracted directly from a segmented image whenever the image resolves the individual grains. Codes for extracting the grain size are readily available in visualization software, such as Imagy and Avizo. We can see in picture 3 grain size analysis on a binary image consisting of matrix and porosity. The figure to the left shows the distance to the nearest porosity voxels. The center image shows maximal balls inside the matrix. And the right figure shows the results applying a weighted water algorithm starting in the ball centers. We move to the final section is method. The first one, there are some assumption or boundaries in this research. The first one is samples with resolves porosity larger than 10%. And then clay content must below 15%. And then radius ratio between smallest and largest grains should not be much larger than 1/10. This operational range is for model size around 1 billion voxels. So the workflow contains 3 big points. The first one is rock characterization, and then we move to the modeling that rock characterization to digital rock model, and then we emphasize flow parameters. So we started with core viewing samples from both the satellite and the main field. And then visual inspection indicated similar geological features in wells from the satellite and the main field. Based on core viewing and log interpretation, we conclude that the wells roughly contain 3 different rock types, visually classified as fine, medium, and coarse sand. After that, the upper part of the different wells start with, from that, we know that the upper part of the different wells start with medium sand interlayered with 1 or 2 sections of coarse sand. And then a set of thin sections were chosen to cover the interval spread in properties for the 3 rock types. Both BSE and EDS image of thin section were obtained. And then the last one, we extracting grain size distributions. Okay, I think that's all for me. Sorry for any mistake. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alfian has spent 6 minutes for his presentation. Okay, and therefore we can move on to the 6th presenter of today's session. Okay, I would like to thank Alfian, Rido, and also Fadila for the previous presentation. The 6th presenter will be Anggita Kirei.
Yes, sir. Clean.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. My name is Anggita Ananda Kirei. Here I want to talk about my scientific paper. It's about estimate 3D radiation dose for treatment planning system or TPS, linear use percentage depth dose, PDD data, and profile dose. Cancer is one word which is not strange for us. Yes, cancer is a disease characterized by the growth of cells that spread abnormally and uncontrollably. This often causes death for the sufferer. And for treat this cancer cell, radiotherapy is the answer. Radiotherapy is the most effective cytotoxic therapy available for the treatment of localized solid cancer and must be carried out properly and also directed through the TPS or treatment planning system, where later the TPS will evaluate the distribution of the right radiation dose for target irradiation. Estimation of the radiation dose distribution was carried out, which was presented using an isodose curve, which would involve PDD data and dose profiles. The PDD data will show the radiation distribution along the main axis of the incident light and will presented in percent, while the dose profile data show the radiation dose distribution on the horizontal or vertical axis, which is perpendicular to the direction of the incident light. All studies have only produced a 2D pseudodose curve. This can cause the radiation dose not to be inaccurate. In this research, radiation dose estimation is performed which show the distribution of surface radiation dose for all depth variation on one curve, resulting in 3D radiation dose estimate. So with this paper, hope the radiation dose to the target can be carried out more accurately, especially on photon. First, let's talk about treatment planning system, or we know as TPS. Therapy based on the principle of radiotherapy must be well planned and targeted. And the planning is done by using a radiation dose called the treatment planning system, or TPS. Here's figure number 3, show irradiation axis schematic. There are cross lines as x-axis, inline as y-axis, and depth as z-axis. Cross line and inline is field area in profile dose curve, whereas depth is depth value from PDD curve. TPS will produce beam step and radiation dose distribution on the irradiation target. Next, about PDD and dose profile. The dose PDD show the radiation dose distribution of the beam face or surface on a horizontal or vertical axis perpendicular to the direction of the incident beam. PDD show the distribution of radiation dose in percent along the principal axis in the direction of incident ray or beam. For measurement, surface radiation dose distribution can be measured by first question, where the XI-YI is the radiation dose distribution of the surface in XY area. The Xi is the percentage value of radiation dose profile dose cross line at point I. The Yi is the percentage value of radiation dose profile dose inline at point I. The XCAX is the percentage value of radiation dose profile dose cross line at the central point of irradiation or central axis. The YCAX is the percentage value of the radiation dose profile inline dose on the central axis. Index I is the percentage of radiation dose data for each point of the field area. Furthermore, the distribution of the radiation dose to the surface is multiplied by percentage value of the radiation dose to the PDD. To the radiation dose estimation at each depth is shown by equation 2 that dxi, yi, z is the distribution of radiation dose to the surface at a certain depth, and PDDZ is the percentage of radiation dose at a certain depth. Next, the method. In this research, the linear accelerator, or LINAC, used is type CLINIC CX at the radiotherapy installation of the Andalas University, and for percentage depth dose PDD and dose profile measurement were carried out using a Camber reference ionization detector, and the object is a blue phantom. There are two important pieces of data in this research. First is percentage depth dose or PDD data and dose profile. The research was carried out using two methods. The first method was collecting PDD data and dose profile using a LINAC. And the second method is processing PDD data and the dose profile is used to estimate the 3D radiation dose using MATLAB. For data processing, first PDD curve and dose profile have been converted in number, and next, saved in Microsoft Excel. Next, do interpolation using MATLAB, and the PDD data and dose profile are interpolated using MATLAB to create a new interval of 0.1 millimeter for each data. In the dose profile data, the percentage dose of radiation dose profile data is placed right in the middle of the file for each dose profile curve. This step is carried out using the FWHM or full width at half maximum function in MATLAB. Next, the estimated value of 2D radiation dose is obtained. And next, the integration is carried out according to the depth. And finally, the estimated value of 3 radiation dose is obtained. Next, the result of this research, percentage depth dose PDD. Figure 7 show PDD curve at variation energy. PDD curve from at 6 MV and 10 MV photons have different percentage of radiation dose. This is so if the use of higher energy will result a higher percentage of radiation dose. And the lower energy use will cause a smaller percentage radiation dose at each depth point. This can be seen from the Compton effect. If the energy use is higher, there will be more opportunities for ionization, thus causing the percentage of radiation dose to also increase. And the PDD curve show that percentage increase in radiation dose occurs from the 0 depth point to the point maximum radiation dose depth or Dmax. Percentage the maximum radiation dose produced indicates that the percentage of radiation dose generated at the maximum depth reach a value close to 100% or exactly at 100%. That's all my presentation for today. If you're interested with this topic and want to talk more, you can contact me at my email. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Anggita. You have spent 8 and 15 minutes for your talk. Okay, which is still below the 10 minutes limit. And the next presenter will be Muhammad Raka Fauzan. Okay, and the time is yours.
Wait. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum.
Greetings, everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Raka Fauzan from Physics of Earth and Complex System Research Division. Today, I'm going to present about my research paper. It is about water saturation modeling and estimation of elastic properties in porous rock models. So first, I want to begin with a question. How can we understand what is happening beneath the Earth's surface? So in exploration of geophysics, physical properties of rock is really important thing to understand, to know what is happening beneath the Earth's surface. Digital rock physics is really important thing to understand. Digital rock physics is a digital-based method to obtain rock physical properties and visualize rock microstructure more efficiently and effectively. With the advances in computer technology, it has become feasible to compute microscopic physical properties of porous rock from its microstructural information using rigorous numerical simulation of physical experiment in realistic porous space geometries. There are some physical properties of rock such as elastic properties, electric properties, and magnetic properties. These physical properties can be affected by certain factors such as microstructure complexity, pore geometry, and water saturation. In this paper, we choose water saturation and elastic properties of rock for our parameter to understand the relation between them. The goal is to complement physical laboratory investigation for a deeper understanding of the physical process. So, as you can see from the equation in the slide, water saturation defined as ratio of water volume to pore volume, and it can also be calculated from effective porosity and resistivity. It can be described as formation of water in undisturbed zone and the ability of solid to hold a great amount of water under specific condition. Now here in figure 2, we can also see the example of water saturation model. The water will fill the pore space of CO2, and the closer the value of the water saturation to 1, the more water will fill the pore space. And in this slide, we can see the example of 3 water saturation model that usually used. So point A is 2D sample of the rock image, and point B is water film schematic that was modeled visually by Knight in 1991, in which the thin layer of water coats the solid surface. Point C is simple water film. In this model, water filling in the pore space is carried out from the bottom to the top of the sample uniformly. And finally, point D is patchy saturation. In this model, the fluid that fills the pore space is defined as a heterogeneous spherical model, which is randomly distributed. Next, we're going to talk about elasticity, and we're focusing on bulk modulus or bulk density. So the bulk modulus or bulk density of a substance is a measure of how resistant to compression that substance is. In this case, we were looking for the effective modulus of the rock known as the Gas-Mann-Hill or GH limit. We got it from Johnson in 2001. To find the effective modulus, we need bulk modulus of gas and bulk modulus of water, which we can get from the Gas-Mann equation. And zero modulus can be obtained from the reference to the physical property of rock and water saturation as a variable that we will vary. Next is finite element method. So to help us study about the relation of water saturation and elastic property, we will use computation of elastic properties using numerical modeling. The program of water saturation modeling will be analyzed by a numerical method developed by Garbocci in 1998, namely finite element method. It will discretize the model into smaller elements that consist of several nodes. Then the solution approach is determined by the value of this node. In this slide, we can see in figure 5 the example of 3D model of quartz, and on the right side, the example of element and node. So here, element is the content of the cubic space, and node is the black dots at corner point, if you can see it, and between the corner points. Finite element method will discretize the 3D model and turn it into several elements and nodes. Then, so how exactly are we going to do this? So first, we start from get our slice of data. We find our 2-dimension sample. We can look it up on website that provide the data, or make the 2-dimension sample itself using porous rock model generator. After we get the slice of data, we turn it into saturated model using saturated modeling program. Then we repeat the process for every slice we have and turn them into saturated two-dimension sample. Then when we combine it together, the saturated slice will turn into a 3D saturated porous rock model. After that, after we have all the saturated slice, we are going to use finite element method code to analyze the model. Then we get the result that is effective model of the rock. In the slide, you can see the example of the two-dimension sample of the rock and two-dimension sample of saturated rock. So this is, I think, 70% of the saturation. Next, in this slide, I just want to show you the algorithm of the finite element method code. But I won't explain furthermore, but I hope you can catch a glimpse of how the finite element method code works. So basically, like algorithms in general, the process starts from reading the input data. In this case, the input data is in the form of the required parameters such as bulk modulus and shear modulus. Then proceed with the process. In this process, there is massing, global node numbering, and the calculation of several equations. This process is repeated until it reaches a convergent value. When it is convergent, result will be obtained. But if it's not convergent, we will set the new value and repeat the calculation again. And the value that we will get is the effective bulk modulus. So maybe this will be the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you all have a great day. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I return it to Mr. Hari.
Thank you, Raka. You spent 8 minutes and 50 seconds for your presentation. And the pace is a little bit slower, but it's okay. But I'm suggesting you to make it a little bit faster for the 15-minute presentation so that you could have more information to describe later on the final presentation. Okay, after we have Raka's presentation, I would like to invite okay, we already have the okay, so I would like to invite Nabila Safli.
Is my screen visible, sir?
Yes, it is. Okay, it's clearly visible on my place. Okay, whenever you're ready, Nabil.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Hari and everyone. My name is Nabila Safli, and today I would like to present my research about the effects of physical distancing on the COVID-19 spread using agent-based modeling. Coronavirus disease, or COVID-19, according to the World Health Organization, is an infectious disease caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. The coronavirus was declared as a global pandemic in 2019 and has become a big problem until today. COVID-19 spreads when an infected person breathes out droplets and very small particles that contain the virus from their eyes, noses, or mouth. In some cases, they may contaminate the surface that they touch. According to COVID-19.co.id, Indonesia has reached more than 4 million cases and more than 140,000 140,000 people have died because of COVID-19 until last September. The implementation of new policies such as lockdown and social distancing was carried out by many countries, including Indonesia, to reduce the spread rate of COVID-19. The practice of social distancing means staying home and away from others as much as possible to help prevent spread of COVID-19. The practice of social distancing encourages the use of things such as online video and phone communication instead of in-person contact. As communities reopen and people are more often in public, the term physical distancing is being used to reinforce the need to stay at least 6 feet from others, as well as wearing face masks. Historically, social distancing was also used interchangeably to indicate physical distancing. However, social distancing is a strategy distinct from physical distancing behavior. Basically, this research aims to understand the spread of COVID-19 disease and also to prove whether the physical distancing will affect the spread of COVID-19 or not. And I hope that the result can help the government to improve the policies to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in the future. So the behavior of the COVID-19 spreading agents can be simulated using an agent-based model. Agent-based model, or ABM, are computer models that attempt to capture the behavior of individuals within an environment. Agent-based model can be used to simulate the interaction in a population, so we can analyze the small changes in behavior. In this research, the simulation is derived from the formulation statements and data retrieval that will be processed by NetLogo software. As you can see on the screen, some of the simulation have been widely used in various fields and applications from social science, politics, and economics, including simulation of evacuation models, traffic, flow management customer, stock market, and so on. ABM is defined as a technique for the simulation modeling where a set of agents is modeled in a system and also the relationship between them. ABM uses a bottom-up approach to see the interaction of individual behavior that can affect system behavior with computer-based simulation. The main element in ABM modeling is an agent, and each agent acts and behaves with the rules that are created in its environment. According to Makal and North, there are 3 elements in ABM. 1, a set of agents, including their attributes and behavior. 2, a set of a relationship and interaction method, including typology for the relationship and defines the interact of the agent. 3, the agent's environment. Agents interact with other agents, also their environment. In 2020, Valdez made an ABM simulation to see the behavior of the COVID-19 spread by adjusting the physical distancing parameters and the hospital capacity that provided. In accordance with the characteristic of agent-based modeling, agents have various characteristics during simulations. Some agents have the same characteristic and some are different. This characteristic will be set through several parameters directly. Some characteristics that will be set in the simulation are morbidity, including probability of infections, incubation time, severity, mortality rate, and length of illness. Also, there are levels of physical distancing, number of agents in an area, and hospital capacity. Agents represent people in an area and are divided into 6 conditions, including healthy, infected, sick, severe, immune, and dead. So in this model, some assumptions and scenarios will be applied. Here, assumptions are set for the simulation. For morbidity, assumptions are taken from the fact about the COVID-19 virus. The percentage of infectious probability will be set at 5%. Incubation time of COVID-19 based on existing data is 5 until 6 days. So here will be set at 5 days. Severity rate at 20%. Death rate at 19% lead to a total death rate at 3.8%. And COVID-19 illness average duration at 14 days. Also, the simulation will be set by 20 for hospital capacity and represented by 200 agents. And there also will be 3 scenarios in the simulation with different level of physical distancing adopted from several conditions that happen in Indonesia, including PSBB, new normal, and PPKM. The different level of physical distancing in each scenario will be set by PSBB, when Indonesia have really restricted activities, including stopping work and school activities, restrictions on public places and transportations, also restrictions on socio-cultural activities that will be set at 0.9 social distance. And then new normal, when Indonesia tried to adapt the COVID-19 conditions and public activities are functioning again, that will be set at 0.2 social distance. And also PPKM, when Indonesia limits offices and schools by implementing work from home, and some of the public places can open with strict health protocol that will be set at 0.5 social distance. The other parameter values in the simulation are considered to be constant. The result of the simulations are the number of affected agents, the number of dead agents, and the duration of the pandemic. Simulations are repeated to see the results of the variations. So in general, the flow of the COVID-19 spread simulation can be explained as, first, initial condition of agents are healthy. And then there is one infected agent at the beginning of the simulation where infected agents can still go around. And then depending on the chance of infection, other healthy agents within the infectious radius will be infected randomly. If agents are infected more than the incubation period, agents will become immune or sick, where the sick agent will stop going around. And sick agents have a random chance of being severe or can recover and have immunity. If there are sick agents while the hospital capacity is full, the agents may die. However, if the hospital capacity is still available, the agent will be treated and their condition depends on the duration of the illness. Randomized severe agent chance of dying depending on the mortality rate specified. In addition, the sick agents can recover and have immunity. And then last, an immune agent only lasts for a specific immune time. So maybe that's all for today's presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nabila. You've spent 8 minutes and 20 seconds for your presentation. Okay, so 8 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay, so therefore I would like, so thank you, Nabila, for giving us a presentation related to the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of the modeling of how it's spreading. And now we are moving on to the 9th presenter, is Rifka Fikria.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the time. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rifka Fikria Rahasri. I am a student from Nuclear and Biophysics Group, Physics Study Program, Institut Teknologi Bandung. Today, I'd like to present my work entitled Analysis of Severe Accident in a Complex System Reactor using Moving Particle Semi-Implicit Method. This is the background of my work. The construction of nuclear reactor is still a matter of concern to the general public, considering the impact caused during a nuclear accident. Since the initial construction of the nuclear reactor, there have been 3 major accidents. There are 3 Miles Island in USA, Chernobyl in Ukraine, and Fukushima Daiichi in Japan. To prevent that accident happening again, research related to reactor design is needed. So, the purpose of my paper is to simulate the melting process of the reactor core in complex system. The left part of the picture is the core of the reactor that I want to simulate. These are the reason why this method is easier compared to other methods. First, it can simulate phenomenon of flow motion. Second, the MPS method can analyze the free surface flow of incompressible liquids without using a mesh grid. So that is very good at simulating the movement of molten fuel in the reactor core. Last, this method can solve the Navier-Stokes equation in the Lagrangian framework. The method applied consists of splitting the time step into steps and correction. The fluid is represented by particles, and the motion of each particle is calculated based on the interaction with neighboring particle via kernel function. In this case, we use an incompressible fluid. The equation governing incompressible fluid flow is the continuity equation and Navier-Stokes equation. In the left side of Navier-Stokes equation represent the Lagrangian differentiation, where rho is density, T is time, U is velocity vector, delta is gradient, P is pressure, V is kinematic viscosity, and G is gravity. The interaction between particles showed as kernel function, where R represents the distance between particles and RE is an effective range from particle interaction. Kernel function can be shown as follows in equation 3. If the distance between particles is greater than the effective range of particle interaction, then the kernel function becomes 0. So the kernel functions graph will be like in the figure number 3. The creation of geometry aims to describe the environment of the specified case when the simulation is run. The result of the geometry that have been made will be used as one of the inputs for running the MPS application. Geometry can be created in 2 ways, using Microsoft Excel or C++. In this paper, I use Microsoft Excel to create geometry. There will be 4 steps in its creation. Set up a code page, source code, drawing a system, and output. The first step is set up the code page. We have to open Microsoft Excel and select the macros in the title bar of the file. It will look like this. And you can change the macros name here and click create. And the view will be like this. The main code doesn't exist yet because we have to create it in the next step. In source code step, I will divide it the main area into 3. The blue area, red area, and green area. The blue area or work area is a section to describe the geometry of particular case that desired. In this section, the index I and G represent the column and rows in Excel that are used as workspace. The red area or color definition, if the cell in the work area has a certain color that has been determined, then the cell will be described as a particular particle. Color selection is required to be specific, so that can read by the program clearly. This is an example of specific color we can use. The third is geometry particle arrangement area or green area. There are particle types, particle position, particle velocity, temperature, and pressure. After all the steps finish, enter the source code in the initial code page. Next is drawing a step of a system. The first step is to create an image for a particular simulation by blocking cell and filling it with the color you want to determine. This is the sample image that you can make on Microsoft Excel, and you can custom of the color here. After that, press the Run button on Microsoft Visual Basic, and the output of running code will appear and look like this. I think that's all from me. For more information, please contact me via email down below. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Rifka has spent 6 minutes and 50 seconds for her presentation. And without further ado, let's move on to the 10th presenter of today's session, which is Ayunda Putri.
Okay, sir. Okay, hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Ayunda Putri Melina, and the title of my presentation is Consumer Behavior Analysis on E-commerce Shopee using Agent-Based Modeling Method. So the first one, I want to tell you the background of this research. As you know that the global population is currently facing one of the most life-threatening disasters since the last century, generally referred to as COVID-19. And to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic, several national governments have implemented lockdown restrictions to reduce the risk of infection. Also, in Indonesia, we have many regulations to reduce the risk of in this pandemic, such as PSBB and PPKM. And we are always encouraged to stay at home and do the social distancing. The coronavirus impact is on all aspects of life, and one of them is on how people fulfill their needs. The coronavirus pandemic has pushed many people to make their purchases online, as many physical retail outlets across the world are either closed due to lockdown measures or have limited capacities to maintain social distancing. And the thing that's interesting to observe from this phenomenon is the behavior of customers who use and make online purchasing process through Shopee. I choose Shopee because on 2020, from iPrice, Shopee is nominated to the most visited platform in Indonesia. And this is the purpose of my research. The first one is to develop customer behavior model for an optimal marketing strategy by modeling customer behavior. And the second one is to offer a better service for customer. And the last one is to help increase product sales. And the method that I choose to observe this phenomenon is agent-based modeling. Agent-based modeling is a bottom-up approach to understanding system, which provides a powerful tool for analyzing complex non-linear markets. The method involves creating artificial agents designed to mimic the attributes and behaviors of their real-world counterparts. The simulation output may be potentially used for explanatory, exploratory, and predictive purposes. And in this model, customer will consider as agent. An agent is interact with environment. And this is an agent-based simulation model for Shopee potential customers. Following the characteristic of agent-based modeling, potential Shopee customers have various characteristics during the simulation. In this study, use 3 characteristics of agent: disseminator, explorer, and do nothing. Disseminator are groups of innovators and early adopters who immediately spread innovations, which is the consumer. In this case, consumers are people who have purchased product on Shopee. And then explorer primarily and prioritize the end of trying innovations before deciding whether to deploy or not. In this case, explorer is people who are still confused between buying the product or not. And do nothing is a group of people who respond to receive message about innovation and do nothing about it. In this case, do nothings are people who have never accessed Shopee. And also from here, we know that explorer is divided into 2, which is satisfied and unsatisfied. And if the customer is satisfied, they will be divided into 2 again. That is disseminated further is consumer will buy a product, and a further action is consumers do not buy the product. And then these are the parameters that will be used in this study. This parameter is obtained from questionnaire that have been distributed and filled out by 77 people. The questionnaire contains several questions regarding customer satisfaction using Shopee. These questions were divided into 2. that is a question with yes or no answers, and question with answers using a scale of 1 to 10. And the first parameter is accessibility, is the level of satisfaction regarding the case, the ease of accessing Shopee. And promo is the level of satisfaction regarding the promos provided by Shopee. And then price is the level of satisfaction regarding the price of products sold at Shopee. And then service is the level of satisfaction regarding Shopee customer. And the last one is effectiveness, is the level of satisfaction regarding the ease of finding the product you're looking for on Shopee. So the input of this research is variation of parameters value that affect Shopee customer buying decision. And with agent-based modeling method, we can get the simulation model of Shopee customer. And now we have an agent-based model. So the agent in this study are potential customer Shopee, and the attributes of agent is characteristic agent, disseminators, explorer, and donating. And another attributes is the customer satisfaction parameters in using Shopee, which is accessibility, promo, price, service, and effectiveness. And then the behavior of agent is customer decision on buying product on Shopee. And then this is the flowchart that will be used in the program. Start, and then over some product online. And this is the number of agent needs less than 770. And then if the customer is not buy a product, the program will do the iteration, or the program will be finished. And if customer buy a product, they will be buy and try the product. And if the customer is unsatisfied, the program will directly finish. But if the customer is satisfied, the program can do the iteration again or just finish. And this is a NetLogo interface generated from the previous flowchart. These parameters that we have previously defined, where accessibility, promo, service, and effectiveness, and price is become decision variables or controllable inputs. And then here is jumlah konsumen is an agent that will be simulated. And then this is the characteristic of agent, disseminator, and explorer. And then by changing the value of the variable, we'll produce a visualization. Here is the graphic of jumlah prediksi konsumen Shopee. And from the graphic, we will know the predicted number of Shopee consumers who buy products at Shopee, or Shopee consumers who only access Shopee. And then here from the simulation, from the another simulation results, it will show the interaction of agent with the environment. And the green color indicates agents who buy a product at Shopee, and the red color indicates Shopee customer who only access the Shopee application. And in this study, the model will be validated by using extreme validation method. Why I choose extreme validation method? Because sometimes it's much easier to predict the behavior of the real system in extreme condition than in normal condition. And with comparing the behavior of the real system in these two conditions, the model can be validated. From this figure, that if all parameters are in maximum value, will make all potential Shopee customer interested to buy a product on Shopee. And also from here shows all agents color are green, which is that show the same thing. So from this model validation show that this model can be used for simulating the consumer behavior of potential Shopee customer on decision to buy product at Shopee online. And that is all from me. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Ayunda. And the last students that needs to present the topic is Muhri Iza. Okay, let me check in the participant list. Okay, there are no Muhri Iza, so I guess we are already conclude our 10 minutes presentation session for today. I would like to thank all of the 10 presenters that has talked about their selected topic in an incredible way. We have a round of applause for all of the presenters today. And for Tuesday, we're going to have a small talk on the discussion of your presentation evaluation. And before we're moving on to the next topic, which is basically the last part of our, it is not the last part, but one of the major assignment requirement that you need to do is the poster presentation, and we will talk about how we prepare our poster presentation, which is not that popular in the time of pandemic nowadays, but nevertheless it was one means of communicating about our research in a graphical way that were preferable by students and also beginner researcher when they want to show their result. And poster itself has several challenges that are quite different with oral presentation, even though the purpose of poster presentation is relatively the same with the oral one. However, there are some things that need to be learned from because there are differences between creating posters and slide presentations. So stay tuned to that session for poster presentation after the evaluation. And with this, I will conclude our meeting today. Thank you for all your attention and your participation. Oh yeah, before I'm closing the class, I would like to remind everybody about the folder that you need to access for uploading the presentation files. Okay, so this is the, so here on the top of the EduNext screen from week 11, the session 1 and session 2 gave you the link for the PPT folder. Okay, the PPT folder. Okay, so this is the PPT folder. I see several people already submit their PPT and PDF or PDF. Okay, I'm not requesting you to send both files. Only I only need you to send one type of files, whether it's in PDF or PPT, from your 10 minutes presentation as a progress report. And the other one is a presenter assessment. Okay, the presenter assessment link is already given in the EduNext here in the bottom. Presenter assessment submission folder that will direct you to this folder. Okay, don't forget to send the assessment presenters, because the marks of all of the presenters from session 1, session 2, and session 3 are gathered from your evaluation. Okay, thank you all for attending the presentation session. We will see you again on Tuesday. Thank you and good day.
Thank you, sir.